Okay, good afternoon and welcome. The time is now 12:17. I'd like to call this Board of Education work session of the Chappaqua Central School District to order. Today we are here to discuss, do I have to have a motion to open? Oh, okay, sorry. Can I have a motion to open the meeting?
I move.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Should we say the pledge? Sorry.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So today we are here to discuss our Board of Education's vision and mission statement, and also looking at our committee charges or charters. We're going to be thinking about that as well. I just wanted to sort of start by saying that the reason and the intent for us to have this work session is because, one, I felt like our policy 0100 on the mission, on the board's mission statement, has not been looked at since 1991, so it's been 34 years. And I thought it was timely, with the 2 new board members added to our board, that we could revisit that and hopefully revise it to be something a little bit more current. And after that, I wanted us to look at our board committees, and because we had made, I know we mentioned this at a earlier board meeting, where we had made all of the committees of the whole. And in order to increase participation and engagement, and opportunities for all board members to speak. But it's really about, the board providing guidance and direction to the administration, and how we can collaborate with the administration on all of our hopes and expectations, and how we can help and support in meeting the district's goals and objectives. And Mr. Shaw, our legal counsel, is also here today to advise us of any state or federal legal requirements that may be needed with some of the committee's charges and charters. So just to make clear that it's not to create more work for the administration. This won't change your work in the district. It's really to collaborate together and to be able to sort of put out there in the open what we are thinking, what our expectations are, and really recommit all of us to our individual roles in our different committees that we belong to. And I just want to kind of start by saying that, and that is our goal here today. Okay. So, it's sort of an open floor. Anybody's welcome to start or share. Don't be shy.
I appreciate you framing it in terms of why we're here, because I think that's a terrific way to start before we do the work of revising any policies, to first just talk about why we're doing it, to hopefully reach consensus on that, or to at least understand what each of us hopes to gain from those revisions. So that sounds terrific. Are we starting, is the intention to start committee charters or mission statement?
Let's start with the mission statement. I think that in having those conversations first, it might help us with when we look at the individual committees.
Fair enough.
So I think Dr. Ackerman, I know you had does everybody have the copy of the original, right? So maybe we can start by looking at that and then kind of see what we think about it and how we want to revise it.
I have two thoughts. I don't, if you want me to share
Yes,
them.
yeah.
So we did a lot of work over the summer around this in the community culture and belonging team. And what I noticed about our mission statement is that it's only really living on the website. And so you may want to think about like considering making it a lot more condensed. I added like an article that we used with exemplar mission statements. They're really short. And then if you revise this, it could potentially be something you want to hang up in the buildings, but it would. I think that it's a little bit too dense right now.
So you think this is more of a vision statement than a mission statement?
Well, I think our vision is our student literacies.
Correct.
So I think the mission statement was probably what mission statements looked like in 1991. I think today, like a more progressive model is something that's a lot shorter, like a one sentence, and that it's displayed so it's a little bit more accessible for people.
Oh,
Those are just my. Well, that if you look,
That's a lot
if you-
shorter.
I'm just saying.
Yeah,
If you
okay.
look at like the article on what is the purpose of the mission statement, I guess you'd have to talk about first. Is it something that you want accessible to all? Is it something to let parents know, what we're striving for? Or is it something that you want to be tangible and accessible to all stakeholders, including kids? So once you kind of figure out that piece, then that can help guide the conversation. Because if you want it accessible to students, it has to be a little bit more condensed.
I like the idea of that, if we could find one sentence that encompasses it all. The idea of displaying it, the idea of it really becoming like a living, breathing thing that we stand behind and that all the kids know is what we stand for. I think that's a great idea if we can figure out how to do it.
I agree that it should be succinct. You could have different approaches to a mission statement. One could be a catch-all that kind of makes sure everyone feels that everything they want is in it. But then what you lose is the succinct element of it. And I have found for myself having a succinct mission statement in the FDNY has really helped me in my career at times that I haven't been sure what to do sometimes with either an administrative task, a personnel issue, something, direction, strategic, to kind of just remind myself, okay, what's the mission? And it's usually then helped me find clarity in how to move forward. And I think that it could serve that purpose for us, serve that purpose for staff, for faculty, and students if we make it a succinct enough mission statement that it's not a whole paragraph. That someone can just say, oh, right, that's the mission.
Okay, so let's brainstorm.
Yeah.
I mean,
I can't commit to the one sentence, though. I'm just putting that out there.
I
But
see a couple
I'm gonna try
exemplars too.
But I'm just
But-
saying.
Have commas.
truthfully, the mission statement, if we want to synthesize it down to what all of the following sentences state, is the first sentence here. This is just bullet point additions to what that first sentence is telling you, how we're going to do it.
Expounds on the same.
But the mission is clear in that first sentence. Now you can sort of add the bulleted points that are in sentences 2 through 5 to that first sentence. There'd be a few more commas, but I think that is, you're getting, and obviously, Christine, you agree with the overall tenor of this, or else you would have changed it when you got here. I mean, maybe other than the length, you sort of agree with what's there.
Yeah, I like the idea of focusing on the first sentence. I think that encompasses, one of the areas that the CCBT team looked at was maybe including some language in the mission statement, but the first sentence with that personal growth piece, I think encompasses it. It's not as specific, because when you look at our vision statement, our student literacies, that's where
Sure.
like the tangible work is that we're
Right.
striving for. Is the board thinking around like having it accessible to students and staff, like the direction you want to go in? Because if it is, then this is not, even if I put this in the walls, no one's going to read
No.
it.
Right.
I just want to be real about it. Let's just be. So
But I agree with
if
that
the goal is
statement.
to have it to be accessible, then you got to pare it down. And then what does it get pared down to? And then one of the things that you could do, if you pare it down, then we can send it back to students for feedback at the high school. We can come back to it. You can send it to parents. You can send it to staff before you finalize it.
I would also, ask the question, who do we think is the most important audience of this? Is it students? Is it faculty? Is it staff? If it's something that's reaching our faculty regularly that they can use, is it as important that it get to the students? That's a thought that I had in my mind.
Well, I think that if we want it to be something the kids believe in, if it's our vision, it's our
Yeah.
mission for what we want for these kids, then I think that their stake in it, they're knowing we have their back, and I think everyone's kind of the audience for it, like parents who might be considering moving here and kids who are going through it with us, like what do we want for them? And I feel like they're part of it.
I like that.
I agree. I don't think that there's one specific audience. I do think it has, because this is a collective responsibility on all of us, because when we dream and when we envision something for a school or a district or for our students that are here, I think we have to make that clear to them, but also know that everybody that is in partnership with us, that are working towards making that happen, where, we make sure that we're not just creating graduates, that are intellectually superior, but, that are ready to be global citizens in this world, and not just compete out there, but also be able to contribute to this society. I think it has to be the students at the center, but also it's almost like it's not one center. And then there's all these other encompassing rings outside of that, where it's the faculty, the staff, the administration, the Board of Education, and the larger community here. So I think the audience is everybody. That's my view.
I mean, I do think the audience has to be more global, but I would start in ensuring that it's the students who are at the center of this, and I think that should be the tenor of the mission statement at large. If we were talking about language, I mean, if we were going to push this forward towards, pairing through the language, I would say that I prefer like the words supportive and understood to caring, or a supportive and understanding environment, because I think that's what we're really trying to do for our students on all levels, whether it's academically or social, emotionally, and athletically, whatever it is to be supportive. And I think that sort of takes, caring falls under that umbrella. But yeah, I think we need to be mindful of making it digestible for our kindergartners. Like if we want this to be like a mission statement for the entire district, it needs to read as such. Because, look, those kids, you probably go into one of the elementary schools right now and say, like, what are you looking to get out of school for the next 13 years? They probably write a better one than this, truthfully. So, I mean, you could maybe, like, put a few bows on it, but, like, they really understand why they're here. So, yeah, I think we need to be mindful of just keeping the students at the center of what the statement looks like.
So should we look at Christine, I know you, what the belonging team brought together. Can we look at that again and see how we can take that and then kind of combine them maybe as sort of a starting point of brainstorming? And I think if you have like certain words that resonate with you or you feel very strongly that should be included, I think you should propose them. And I think the administration could also chime in. Feel free. because you're part of this work, major part.
So do you want me to read the language
Yes.
suggestions
Yeah.
that they had? Okay, so it's the second layer of the Google Doc I shared. So we imagine a school where everyone feels safe, seen, and celebrated, where we all blossom together in a joyful and connected community. We're a school where every student can be their true self and where we know and show we're better together. The next bullet is one community. The next bullet is we welcome everyone and create a space where all feel safe, included, and seen. We learn who we are, how to be kind, and how to care for and celebrate each other as we grow together in a joyful, connected community. Be you, belong here, better together. We are a community that celebrates individuality, fosters belonging, and grows stronger side by side. And all voices, many paths.
I mean, I think the words that were repeated there that I think we should aim to include are connected and community. They come up, I think, in 3 of the bullet points, and for me, those are words that are emblematic of what we're trying to achieve here.
I agree with that. I also think the idea of feeling seen and included. And now it's going to take us into more than one sentence. But
No, I think we should, I
No,
know
I'm
the
just
one
gonna go.
sentence or even 2 makes it really hard because we're like, oh wait, now it's gonna get really long, or like it's gonna have a lot of commas, but I think we should first maybe draft the paragraph and then try to pare it down and see what makes sense. And I think it's okay if it's not one sentence. I really do. So, yeah, I don't know. I kind of imagined this work session to be a little bit more robust.
Well, I think we can.
I'm not sure what's happening.
There can be, a one sentence kind of catch-all that is put places if that's what we want to do with it, or the one that's kind of communicated more specifically to the students. But I don't think that doesn't mean we can't have more there.
I feel like the two sides of what I guessing we wanted to say is that academic excellence, but at the same time, like social, emotional, community caring, being seen and being part of the group, connected. Like, so it's like academic excellence and being, a connected community where we care about each other. So those to me feel like the two cruxes that we want to like communicate out. So I feel like we can make it as meaty as we want for a paragraph, but maybe like that, some kind of tagline at the top that is just like encompassing those two, and then the meat can be in the paragraph below it.
Right.
But we have a tagline that we can put on a banner, and not just put on a banner, but like really infuse into every building, into every kid, and like those are the things that we want for you. We want you to be as strong and smart and powerful as you can be, but also being, a healthy, happy kid.
I still think it should be succinct. I think when you start getting to the paragraph like we have now, it starts becoming like a kitchen sink. And then when someone is trying to refocus on what our mission is, it's hard to focus on it. Well, it's this paragraph of 37 things. I think if we can keep it more succinct, it will serve as that beacon of what our mission is. Because it can be distracting in a big organization. What is the mission?
Okay, so do you have an example? Were you thinking of anything?
I really appreciate Matt's recognition that the first sentence of the existing mission statement seems to encompass a lot of what we want, and I like the idea of either replacing or including a couple additional words. I think it's a great suggestion. Prior to this meeting, I had drafted something which is one long sentence. I'll read it to you. I don't think it's better than the idea of taking the existing sentence and maybe just building on it. And again, I had some thoughts of further revisions to this because there's no good writing, there's only good rewriting. But our mission, I think it should be our mission, is to provide a welcoming, engaging, and compassionate educational environment that inspires our students to love learning so they can grow to their full potential in all domains, knowing their inherent worth, the with self-awareness and the ability to skillfully collaborate with others on their journey to lead fulfilling, self-directed, and purposeful lives that are true to themselves.
That is
It's a
not
lot
one
of words.
sentence.
That's
No.
one sentence, lots of punctuation,
I have
but
an
one
idea.
sentence. It's a lot, and it needs to be revised. But
You
that
gotta
was
drop
like-
that, you gotta drop that into the
Kitchen
document.
sink
I couldn't-
I'll drop it in the document. It needs revision, and I wanted to get seen and heard. My very first note was get seen and heard. But like that, I think it could be a little more energetic. I like the word propel, propel them on their journey. But I think it needs, and this is too long. But that idea of excitement, joy, growth in all domains, and one sentence or maybe two, but not the paragraph. That was my initial assessment of the mission statement when I looked at it a couple months ago. It's a kitchen sink. Everything in it is good, but it's too much to focus. I'll drop this in, but again, it would be if we take a couple words out of it, I think would be its contribution.
Can we maybe break into like 3 small groups and each try to come up with something and then bring it back together?
Yes. Oh,
Okay.
great idea.
All right,
Let's do it.
I'm done.
Adam will run a
I
group,
did it already.
I'll run a
That's
group,
done.
Mission statement's finished.
and Yasmin will run a group. So we should just be like,
Say propel anyway.
I
I'll do
can
it.
add propel.
You can add
Wait.
propel.
I will now, because I like that. Okay.
all right, so I'm gonna,
Allison, you can be with me because we're done already.
Yeah, should we just go over what
Thank you.
each group came up with?
yeah, sure, Tim, do you want to report out on your group or
Sure.
Melissa?
Okay.
What we came up with, it's the green one under the peace box. And again, of course, with the realization that we're all just bringing our ideas and we're all then going to be potentially melding them. Our mission is to cultivate a welcoming environment that promotes academic excellence and supports the social, emotional health of every child. We inspire a love of learning, self-awareness, and collaboration so all students, I'm sorry, I need to read it again. We had a last-minute change. Our mission is to cultivate a welcoming environment that promotes academic excellence and supports the social, emotional health of every child while inspiring a love of learning, self-awareness, and collaboration so all students realize their potential and lead purposeful lives. I realized it was lacking propel.
We included propel.
You want to do yours now?
Sure.
Sure. Our mission is to.
Oh. That's okay. Our mission is to develop and propel future global holistic citizens by cultivating a connected community, advancing academic excellence, and fostering an understanding and supportive environment.
Which one are we two?
Yeah, we're two.
Which one would you ladies like me to read? The first one or the second one or both?
Read both because we can't decide and we're not really set on it.
Okay. Our mission is to foster a dynamic and inclusive learning community where students, families, and educators collaborate to pursue academic excellence, personal growth, and social responsibility while embracing innovation to prepare individuals to contribute meaningfully to society and shape our future. And
This is our family version.
That's a good
our
idea.
mission is to create a welcoming place where students, families, and teachers work together to learn, grow, and help others while using new ideas to get ready to make a positive difference in the world.
I like having a kid-friendly version. That's like really, we were debating like, do kindergartners know what social emotional health is and that kind of thing. So I like having a version.
This is
Maybe-
what I shared with my group, is that it's really important to me that we somehow convey the message of like all of the things that we do here, everything that we're doing or trying to do or to draft here is really so that they can become global citizens to really, I said it before, not only to compete, but to contribute to society. So it's not just so that I can go out there, I'm learning all of these things so I can make a lot of money. Yeah, that's gonna be great too, but you can make a lot of money, but like also contribute. And it goes back to, civic education, which, is really a big topic right now as well. So I want that sentiment to somehow live in our mission statement, so that it's the emphasis of academic excellence and social emotional well-being and health really has to be side by side, that you can't have or only strive for rigor and academic excellence, which doesn't necessarily define one anyways, but you have to do it in conjunction with taking care of yourself and taking care of others in our community. And that's really, really important.
Well, our discussion with Yasmin and Josh, I think we all agreed that the academic excellence part we feel like needs to be in there, but for me, and I think we all agree, that was the least important part that creates the global citizen. You get there through the community and growing up in an understanding and supportive environment. That's just a means to an end for me, but to create that person that we'd be proud of representing Greeley 30 years down the road, it's by supporting them and growing up inside of a community in that way, because those are the skills that will ultimately propel you to a purposeful life. So that I feel like it has to be in there, but for us, like on the whiteboard, it was, we get to that point through the other things first. The academic excellence is just sort of like the barrier to entry for any great school district, but that's not what I'm focused on.
I also think, though, it's, because I think I said this a little about innovation, I think it's keeping academic excellence in here, I agree, I think it's important, but I think it's also an opportunity to kind of change what we mean by academic excellence, because I think for most of our students and parents, academic excellence means getting really good grades, getting into college, or good college, getting a good job, making a lot of money. For me, academic excellence is making sure our district is doing an excellent job teaching everybody that comes into our building, whether that person goes to, run a Fortune 500 company or become a garbage man. I don't know, so I think we have this like unique opportunity, and I said it with innovation too. We talk a lot about innovation, and I think we are also we're innovative in how we teach our students, not just teaching them innovative topics. So I think it's this unique opportunity to kind of reframe those terms.
And just being on the forefront of education, like, not afraid to try the new thing. If research comes along that said that you could do it better by doing this, we're not afraid to do it better.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep having discussions around what do we mean by academic excellence, and is it in service of personal growth and global understanding, right? Is it, what do we really mean? How are we defining this for our children? Because everything is basically subject to interpretation at this point. So this is a good time to kind of have those discussions, but I think in the end, I'm hoping that in the end that we all kind of have similar views and thinking around, how we want to educate our students and how we want to support them, and and to what intensity. Mm-hmm.
So we have, I think we have 4, like I agree them, potential statements that we could get feedback on. And then what you do do is you get the feedback in, and then you create one for feedback. But I think that it's got to be tiered. Like the best place to first start to get feedback I always find is either from our staff or from our kids before we send it out to the wider community. So would you like us to get some feedback from this from our K-12 staff and from our high school students?
Yeah.
And then we'll come
Sounds
back and
great.
we'll look at it, and then we'll start to kind of craft it based on what they're sharing with us. So we can have that done.
That's great.
We can have that done pretty soon. Okay, I'm going to give you an update on next Wednesday when I send that.
I think Yasmin was talking, and Josh were both talking to this point. We need a new one. I mean, it's old.
Yeah.
I mean, like, people dated.
The language is very dated.
Can the administration actually share what they're thinking? Because I think it's nice to hear from you guys specifically on what your thinking is around what all of the board members have been saying.
Give that person a mic.
No, I mean, I think the focus is in the right place. I think a very, very short statement, though, allows people to remember it and then allows it to be actionable in decision-making. So you can always return and ask the question, are we doing this with this decision? So if it was something like preparing, young people to make a positive contribution in the world, I mean, that's not really flowing off the tongue, it's really catchy, but if it's something like that simple and that straightforward, you could ask, is that what this new course that we're going to offer contributes to that mission? Is that what this new club offering contributes to that mission? Is that what this, and you can then plug in anything. And I think so having something really short and pointed would be helpful in the system by helping to align us.
Thank you.
So I think everything everyone's saying here has been now more about wordsmithing than about the actual mission, which is actually really heartening to hear that we're all on the same page about what the mission of the school district is. So I think the academic piece and making it more broad as not just achievement, but also how you learn and what is learned in there is important. And agree, we have to make sure that within the statement has global citizens, innovation, and all the things that we really believe in as a school district, and making it short and bite-sized. The one thing Yasmin and I were talking about is that these missions statements go places that we don't even think about, like they're hanging up at PNW BOCES, right? So we also need to make sure that there's broader audiences beyond just of our community that will see and think about this and use this to sort of hear what the Chappaqua School District believes education is.
We were talking about what makes us unique and really focusing on that in light of what is the current mindset regarding our mission, because it should be what's in the next 1 year to 5 years. And so for us, it's really about being relevant and making certain that it addresses the concerns and thoughts and desires of our community. And that's really what drove the conversation for us in our group.
I love the survey idea. I think these are safe enough to try when push them out there and get some feedback. I was struck a few years ago when we replaced the signs coming into Greeley. You see the flags on the flagpole, and they all have words on them as you drive in. And we surveyed the students. We gave the students a list of, I forget how many, there were more than 50 words on the list, maybe 75 words on the list, all things that we aspire to be, right? All really positive words. And we had the Greeley students select the ones that we felt were most important to what they believe Greeley to be about. Because we had old words and we felt let's get the student voice in this. And they picked words that really gave the faculty pause, all about performance. They were all about achievement, they were all about performance, and they were not really aligned to what we're describing here, which I think is this deeper, whole person, self-actualization fulfilled. So I think it'll be interesting to get some feedback. I think we should think about that survey, because when they think of Greeley, and maybe that means we could do a better job at like some of those things, like communicating those values, but maybe not. You know, we might have a little bit of a miss when it comes to what students are feeling as they're charging through and feeling good about, and what they're full of pride about, compared to what like we want as, you know, kind of the adults in the school community. But I would say, long story short, I would say let's push it out and get some feedback. But I would be interested to hear a little bit more from students about like what words they think are most important to their experiences as they go through. Because in some cases it's like achieve. You know,
well, to Andrew's point,
one, yeah.
To Andrew's point, when you get it down, then you start grounding all of your work, and you base your decisions on our new mission statement, our new vision for what the district looks like. So maybe somewhere along the way, it just became too centered and focused on performance. And now if we ground it in something that reads like this, our decisions going forward will be based on that, and not, you know, obviously we want our kids to do well, they do well anyway, but how do they get there, and what do they ultimately look like, I think is, for us, I'm hearing the most important thing.
I'll also share the suggestion that if we were to do that, and then you were to survey the students 15 years from now, we might get different answers. And I'll also share my experience growing up here. I never felt strong academic rigor, pressure. It was about doing things that just feel right. You know, it was like seeing faculty go out in the world and change the world, and having that modeling and feeling like you mattered, feeling like you had agency, and feeling like you should pursue what excites you. And I hope that for my children and all of them.
And I think that, you know, to Adam's point, if you ask a kid in junior year of high school, how does high school feel? Like, it's going to feel success, achievement, like those are the things that feel the most pressure to them in that moment. And I guess it's our job as the adults in the room to support their academic journey, but again, also bringing home that social emotional piece that is at the most difficult times really hard for them to achieve, like that well balance, that and to get the message across to them that we care more about the person you become in the end as opposed to where you get into college. And high school is a hard time to believe that to be true. Like, you know, it feels very true when your kid's in elementary school, but when in that moment in high school and feels like every little thing you do is counting to get you to the next step, it's hard for kids to feel that the school only really cares about my social emotional health. So I think that we have to help, you know, reframe the high school experience for our kids, that we want you to do as well as you can do and have that opportunity for academic excellence, but not sacrificing what that might do to you emotionally to get there. And I think that that's a really hard ask, a big ask, but if we can infuse that in the language and then really bring it home to our kids, that's the goal, right?
I think what we're trying to do here is actually, it's very heavy. It's a lot of responsibility, and I want to be able to live by it. I don't want to just kind of put it out there and then have it all hung up everywhere and then send a different message when it comes to decision-making time. Maybe, no pun intended in the decisions book that we put out here. But, you know, things like when we talk about how we want all of our students to participate in not only extracurriculars in for academics, but also in sports and in the arts. And yet we don't have a schedule or a system, and it's not our fault, but we don't have a schedule or system that allows a student to be a top athlete, but also be able to then compete in, let's say, debate. It's just one example. Or if you are a super musician, but you can't be a musician and also be the star of a basketball team because they both meet and practice at the same time. So I think these are things where we can change, obviously, the system, that the way it's set up, because it's not just, this is not an issue that's exclusive to Chappaqua. It's sort of everywhere. But I think that's just something to think about when we try to say, well, can they talk to the faculty and see if they could try to balance those things where it's not, you're you're signed up for everything and you're half-hearted and everything, but like be fully engaged and involved, but maybe your attendance gonna have to be, divided by 2. And does that work? Maybe it doesn't. And those are some of the hard choices that students have to make and think about. But, I do think about that a lot because it comes up quite frequently for a lot of our students where they are excelling in so many things or even wanting to take part and just learn a new thing. And they're just unable to. So I think this is good work for us. I think it is heavy. It's a lot of responsibility, but it's necessary. So
I find sometimes the kids, they come up with better ideas than us, so I'd like to give them a chance to give feedback and then allow them to kind of draft their own mission statement, and we'll bring that too.
Do you think it's better to ask them before they see what we have?
No.
No?
No, we should say, these are the mission statements that we have drafted. Give us your feedback, and if you'd like, provide your own. And then let's see what they give us. They might give us something where we're like, oh my gosh, that's it.
Well,
That could
that
happen.
would be,
That could happen.
well, that would be the point, right?
Yeah, it would be great. We won't do that with the teachers, though.
I-
We'll have them draft it.
I was
But
about to say, will we get feedback from the faculty as well?
Yeah, we will.
Okay.
And then once we get like a real working draft, that's when you should send it out to the community.
that makes sense.
So, okay, so
Yeah.
we'll work on a schedule, and then I can share with you guys next week.
Great. Okay. Does anybody need to take a break or everyone's good? All right. So we're just going to move on then to the committee charters or charge, I'm going to say. Let's talk about that. And I think I said at the beginning of the meeting that the reason for doing this is just to not, again, create more work for anybody, but to sort of streamline and to sort of recommit the board in giving direction and guidance to the administration in collaboration of supporting the district in meeting their goals and objectives. So I think there are, though, if Mr. Shaw would like to chime in on, I think there are some committees that I think we are required by law to have certain charges or charters, maybe, even. And what the difference is, maybe.
So the one where there is a charter requirement is the audit committee that came into existence in the early 2000s. So that's a requirement. For board committees, whether it's a subcommittee or a committee of the whole, charter is sometimes used, charge is also sometimes used, and that's what the board, I think, should be focusing on. And with respect to a charge, that would be perhaps broader and flexible in the sense that it may change within a school year or from a school year to school year. The audit committee charter very rarely would change.
Right.
Some are committees of the whole of the board, some have external members, and once it gets rolling, in my experience, there's been very little deviation from the original charter.
Okay. So with that, I would think personally that a charge would be more appropriate because I don't want to create this rigid situation where we can't change the charter, or not that we can't, but I want to be able to work within, with flexibility within the committees so that when things change and things arise, that we have that flexibility to say, okay, we're going to shift our focus to X, Y, and Z for right now because this is happening and we want to address those needs. Does that make sense?
I'd actually like to ask, I didn't follow the difference between a charter and a charge, or how a charge is enacted, and how long it lasts, and what it means. You know, and look, just to kind of sort of context, to set context of my understanding, I've looked at a number of other school districts that have charters for some of their committees, and they seem to lay out, you know, how membership is determined, who the people will be, what the scope is of what the committee should be looking at, you know, setting the committee's authority. Is that my understanding correct, if that's what a charter typically is, or am I wrong there? And then how does a charge differ?
The charter usually is far more elaborate than a charge. A charge would be, we're doing this. The details about how a committee would operate, a charter may replicate a lot of provisions that are already part of the law. And the question is, in setting the charter, are you being consistent with legal requirements, or are you kind of going beyond the law? And I think you can go on a slippery slope that way if you're not careful. So, for example, you want to call a committee meeting. Who calls the committee meeting? If you're a committee of the whole, a Board of Education meeting, for example, can be called by any one of the trustees. So now if you're looking at a committee, are you going to establish a rule for the call for the committee? Will it be differentiated for one kind of committee versus another, which would seem a little odd? So I think the charge is a simpler format, and then you're pretty much following open meetings law for structure. The people who are chairing the committee, that's usually set by a board resolution. It could be repeated in a charter, but ultimately that is a board authority to determine who will be the chair. Or it might be delegated authority to the president of the board. And in some districts that will be done, in other districts it won't be done. It's legal to do it. That kind of delegation would be legal, many other kinds are not. So I think it's how much formality and structure you're going to infuse into a charter as opposed to a charge which may be more generic and there would be less detail in what you're doing.
Okay. That was very helpful, and I guess I'm still not entirely sure what a charge would entail. I haven't seen examples of them.
If you go on the bottom of the chart and click on Croton Harmon School District, there's an example there of committees written in a charge format. This helped me kind of see it. And then above that, you can see Monroe, Woodbury, where they have charters. Kind of mirrors David's comment. The charge is short, condensed. What are you doing? And the charters are long documents. Just for some context.
I also think that how I'm understanding it is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that I think the charges would accomplish the same as a charter, except it's more succinct, which I know you prefer, and that it organizes all the details and mechanisms in place to be able to carry out the committee's duties and make sure that everybody understands their roles. And it doesn't sort of confine you to say, okay, this is it, and so what happens next year? You know, the board is ever so changing, right? And so do we then have to draft a new charter that's pages and pages long, usually, every year? Or whereas when you could look at a charge and say, okay, is this the same? It's sort of like mini goals, I want to say, in a way, like, okay, what are the goals for this committee this year? And then having that flexibility to say, okay, we're going to pivot here and shift our thinking this way. That's my understanding of it.
That sounds great, and I appreciate this, because when I was looking, I was only looking for committee charters, and I wasn't aware that charters were a thing. And just looking at this, it does encompass, I think the reason why I think we should be doing committee charters or charges is to make sure we have a written down agreement of what the committee's mission is for that committee to help stay focused on what we're trying to produce, what we're trying to bring back to the board. That's fantastic. And this is, I like that it's succinct. How are charges either enacted or changed? Do we have to do a first reading, second reading? Can we just change them by a resolution of the board? Are they more flexible in that way?
It would be more flexible.
That also sounds good. That we can have a written explanation, written agreement of what we're doing, but then there's less steps to go through if we all decide we want to change the agreement. I like
Yeah.
that.
What's everybody thinking?
I like having the charters because it gives boundaries as to what the committee work should be. And
You
so
want
like,
charters?
no, I mean, charges, not the charter. The charges, because it gives like this is what we're doing when we're a part of this committee, so
Yeah.
everyone has a clear understanding
Yeah.
of it. I have to look at, we do have some, I didn't think to pull this out, but we do have some language. It's not as deep as it needs to be. From when we advertised, if people wanted to be on the committees, what they were about. So
Right.
we can plop
Right.
those into the document next
Right, that's a
meeting
good
and look
point,
at that.
yes. Yes, we do give little summaries on what the committee is about, what we're looking for, who we hope to have be participants in those committees. So that could be something that we can use too. And again, like, this is not something that we need to draft and like walk away with the final copy today by any means. This was sort of like the initial point of discussion where everything's going to be taken in broad strokes, and we have to think about it and like sit with it, and we can all individually go back and do more research or not. But like, I think this is a good jumping off point. Yeah, but that's a great idea.
Can I ask a question? The blurbs that we send out to the public when we're asking for new members, are those blurbs pulled from these documents here, these policies that, I guess, what are these, the charters that we had before? I mean, is that language pulled from here, or is it different language?
My impression too of looking at these various policies that we have is that I think it was really only the health and safety one actually read to me like a charter that defined the membership and the scope. The others almost seem to be just more broad policies about what we'd like to happen in the district without really talking about what work the committee should be doing to further the goal.
I think that also comes with being a part of the committee and then having those discussions with the committee members, and then depending on who the chair of the committee is, I think you could kind of work together in creating that as you go. I think the health and safety one sometimes comes more naturally because there's a lot of laws that we need to follow. There's a lot of rules. There's regulation. Right? It's a little bit clearer in that, as opposed to, and so is like something like facilities or policy. But if it comes to wellness, again, we can define wellness even in so many ways. I bet you if we just went around right now, every single person in this room will define it a little bit differently.
Well,
And then
that's one
so-
that's certainly evolved over the years.
Right.
I mean, clearly, if this policy was written in 1991, then wellness looks completely different in 2025 than it did then. So that's one for sure that,
And we don't even have, maybe we just take it printed out, but I don't have a communications one in here.
Okay.
Okay.
What we put out, so when we did this initially, we attached the policies or we created a description of the policy.
The wellness policy was established in 2006. It was in response to a requirement.
right,
And they do talk about committee.
right.
I would think also since some of the committee members are not Board of Education or administration. Some of them are either subject matter experts or, community residents with expertise in those areas. In our description, in our charge, I think we want to provide them some instruction on procedures on how they go about doing things. Like if they have ideas that they'd like to discuss in the committee, my thought is that we should have a sentence explaining to them how they propose their ideas, so they know what to do and know how they contribute to the committee.
More procedural.
A little.
Yeah.
I don't think we need a ton, but really key things.
Sure.
I think we should provide some procedural guidance so everyone's on the same page about how they suggest something for the agenda, for example.
Do you have an example? I'm just trying to,
I would think each charge that involves community members, at least or possibly each committee in general, should have some kind of sentence saying what someone should do if they want to put something on the agenda. Do they email the chair? Probably. Should they expect a response from the chair saying it's on, it's not? What kind of thing? Just to lay out so everyone knows what path they should take if they want to try to contribute an idea to the committee.
so now I'm thinking about your question. So then would that be the same for a fellow board trustee versus a community member that's part of the committee versus the administration who's going to be doing most of the work and the heavy lifting of all of the work in the committees?
I think another thing to decide is who's setting the agenda.
Right.
Is it
So-
the chair? Is the chair with administration?
I would think that it would be the chair and somebody from the administration.
I would think so too.
David, Mr. Shaw.
Very important point, that if people are going to be on the committee, they ought to know whether or not their voice will be heard in the form of action resolutions. And agenda setting will be key to that. If the agenda would be set by the chair of the committee and the superintendent or administrative designee, then people would know that their idea may be heard, but it may not be acted upon through the committee, that the agenda setting would be within the domain of the chair and the super designee.
So someone could request something to be put on the agenda, but at the end of the day, it is the board chair, the committee chair and the superintendent or their designee.
I think it would depend on what we decide that committee charge is and what the procedure is for that committee. David, weigh in, please tell me if I'm wrong, but I've seen some, I forget where it was, I saw some, I think it was for a school board, they had a procedure for agenda setting where if a suggestion or a proposal or an agenda request was denied by the board president and superintendent, then the discussion as to whether or not that topic should be on an agenda was actually a required agenda item, and the full board would consider it to possibly add to the subsequent meeting. I don't know if that's extremely uncommon or not, but the idea of, how much procedure do you build in to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to have their proposal at least heard?
So,
Let
but
me-
are you
let me
talking
comment
about
on that.
committee? What-
So, that would be relatively uncommon.
Uncommon.
One thought that I had is
Yeah.
you're creating a committee of the whole structure where some of
Yeah.
your committees will be board members only, all board members. For a board member to call a meeting under the law, any one of you has that authority, special meeting. The question is, does a quorum show up?
Mm.
So you may have an idea, and if a quorum isn't buying into that agenda, you're not going to have your meeting, and then the next step would be trying to persuade the agenda-setting authorities to put it on an agenda. To have a discussion at a board meeting about a potential topic, while it's a good idea, it's a democratic idea, it could end up creating a lot of conflict among the board members that might better be managed not at a board meeting. But what you mentioned, I've seen that in policy before. before, and I've also seen articulation of it at meetings, and it's not a controlled environment.
In your opinion, not best practice?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that, because also I think we have to make a distinction between committee, what we're asking for in committee meetings versus regular business board meetings. Even though all of our committees now have become committees of the whole, where all board members can attend and engage and participate real time, I think, so we have to kind of separate the two, because one is not the same as the other. And then depending on, is it just the 3 board members that are present versus 4 versus all 5? So I think there should be a clear distinction. And then, again, this is our first year doing this, so I think we all should be patient in trying to figure this out. And I really appreciate everybody's efforts. But I think this is all good stuff. But I think we need to just understand that we're talking about 2 different things. There's committees, and then there's the board meeting, and how we want to bring up agenda and agenda setting and all of that.
So a question of, do these, as committees of the whole, do the committees need to follow an agenda? Or is there more flexibility in that?
There should be an agenda for every meeting.
Yeah. So I would agree that agenda setting between the 2 bodies could be different, could handle committee agenda setting differently than full board agenda setting. But it sounds like they're both, certainly if we're looking at committee charges, we should be, sounds like, describing how the agenda is set, who does it.
Yes. I think it's just that, I'm just putting it out there, that there could be some confusion just because at some committee meetings, it will be just the 5 of us, could potentially be, and no outside people, and could feel like it's a board meeting, but it's not. I mean, it's a regular business meeting, but it's not. So, just want to put that distinction
But I
out
think
there.
at least, last year in the communications committee, there's agendas in the meetings.
No, every
Yeah,
meeting should
right,
have an
that's
agenda.
agenda.
Like, we should all know what we're
Hasn't
gonna
Yeah.
discuss.
Been done.
Can I offer, just a point of clarification? Because the way that we helped support the committee work last year is we did a SWOT analysis at the first meeting to set the agenda for the year with the committee. So if you want to do it a different way, we just need to know what it is. So we will support however you want to structure this, we just need to know what our role is, and we're there. And we did get a lot of work done that way. I just want to put out, we did a lot of work last year in all of the committees, and I felt like everyone had ownership in that work because of the way we set the agenda, which we could still do, and we just need some clarity so we can help get ready for the first meeting for you.
I understand, I think, correct me if I'm understanding incorrectly, your point about community members who are on the committees maybe not feeling like their voices are being heard.
So we invite them. Yeah.
Right, so like if there's a way, and maybe this isn't something that has to be in a charge so much as something that has to be communicated better to the community, how, instead of feeling like they have to come into the meeting and try and get out everything that they want to say, now that we are running the committees a little differently, if there's like an actual way, like if there's something you would hope to talk about in the next meeting that goes along with the charge that we've already set, they should be emailing maybe the chair, the chair and the designee together so they can talk about if that's, because it's that balance, right, of we want to make sure that we're getting to the things that the community wants discussed, but sometimes things have to be triaged, and it can't be that next meeting. It might have to be a subsequent meeting, but at least that way people are feeling like they're being heard in the committees. I don't know the best way to do that.
I think it's also good to sort of remember that while we do choose community members to be a part of these committees, they're not chosen, they're not elected where they're representing the entire community. That's who we are.
Yeah.
And so like they might have some personal interest in XYZ issue concerning XYZ committee, but it's not representative of the entire community. But 100% believe that they should absolutely have a voice. That's why they're there. And it's just finding a way to make sure that those voices are heard and there's room and opportunity for that to happen. And I know that in some committees, some members felt like it wasn't always the case. And so I think this would be good with having something written that where it's clear on how to bring your ideas forth to the committee.
Also add a small point that I think that having an agenda that everybody knows about some number of days in advance of the meeting just makes for a much more productive meeting. You know, I think on things, so when I see, oh, we're going to be talking about these 5 points over the next 5 days, I'm thinking about it. Everyone is, and we can come together and have a really productive meeting rather than, well, what's on the agenda? These 5 things, I never thought of them before. I'm not going to come up with probably as good ideas.
No, I agree. I think it's always nice to kind of, mull over and like think about what you're going to be discussing so that, maybe, for me, I want to like write it down and I want to organize my thoughts and that I don't go in feeling like, okay, like what did I want to say on this topic? Is there a time constraint in terms of like how much in advance? I know in special meetings when, a board member calls a meeting, it has to be noticed by a certain time. Is there anything like that for committees and agendas?
It's the same. It's at least 24 hours advance notice of the agenda items. With committees, though, since only recommendations are being made to the board, there would be no action to set aside, just be the value of monitoring legal compliance.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we want to make at least a bullet point list of the things that we think should be in each charge, or do you want to take this the rest of our time a different direction?
I think, what is our time here?
Till 2:30.
Someone has a hard stop at 2:30.
Okay. So, I don't know, what do you guys think? I feel like I need some time to like sort of digest everything that's been said today. But we can go over some of the basic, like fundamental stuff like that belongs there that you want to talk about.
Did David have something?
As I'm listening to the conversation and you have multiple committees, it may make sense to have a policy that maps out the identical features for the committees so that every committee doesn't have to articulate exactly the common elements. So you can have a relationship between policy on committees and then the committees and their charges.
David, we have, do you think that if we go in this charge direction, we keep the advisory committee policy and then sunset like the wellness policy, the health and safety committee policy, and the facilities planning and development policy? I hear we need to keep the audit committee policy. Like we move away from having these separate policies and then put everything under the advisory committee? Is that what you're suggesting?
I think we have to go back and look at the regulations of the commissioner.
Okay.
Because a lot of it may be articulated there. For health and safety, for example. Wellness may also have statutory and regulatory elements to it. So I think they'll need separate treatment. Now that treatment can be in the policy, and then the issue is the charge to the committee that's derived from the policy.
I think what you could consider doing is we could do some research, like draft language around some of these charges, and then at your first meeting, you can get feedback from the committee on the charge of the committee, right? And then look to try to finalize that. And maybe the policy committee can discuss whether or not it makes sense to put that in the advisory committee policy, which is 2005.
Yeah. I think we need time. I think I need time to process. What do you guys think?
I think at the very least, we should just capture what we've discussed so far and make sure we record it, I guess. Has someone done that, or do we need to take a minute and jot down some of the ideas we've discussed?
Well, I'm hearing we're moving away from the charters, right? Which means we need to perhaps adjust one of our policies based on what I'm looking at. And I hear we're moving towards a charges type structure.
Being charged with something.
And David is sharing that it might make sense to have it connected to a policy, but we also have to look at the regulations for the other standing policies to see if they're required. I'm hearing that you want to do joint agenda setting between the committee chair and the administrators. You're hearing from me that the way that we set the agenda last year was really collaborative with the committee through SWOT analysis, but we don't have to do that. That's just one strategy to get all voices in the room, to set the work for the year, but we weren't very formal in like sending out an agenda before the only committee that really did that was audit. Did facilities send out an? We with the other committees, we use these.
We sent it out a day or two before the meeting, just to remind everyone.
So I'm hearing we want more formal structure there.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's better because I think it's easier for participants to see what we will be discussing, and it's just clear. I think we should send it out in advance.
But I like the SWOT analysis because, like you said, if there's new community members or just community members in general on those committees with us, to have them feel like their voices are heard on that very first meeting and to set the tone for the whole year and what we're there to accomplish together, I feel like that's helpful.
I think, again, voices being heard is great. I don't know if that in that setting sometimes works out always the way we think it will or envision that it will, because some people are not comfortable raising some of the concerns that they've been having regarding X issue. So I want to think about that. I don't know if I want to do an entire, I think a little bit more formal and the controlled with having the agenda go out and having the discussion before, I think makes more sense because it's also, you do that once, but it's not, you can't do it again the next time if there is a shift in something and you need to refocus your attention to something else for that committee.
That's a good point.
So I want to think about that. I don't know. What do you think?
I agree. I was a lot more excited about the mission statement than I was. I'm just being honest.
Okay. Yeah, I really, it doesn't need to be, I don't have the right word for it, but it doesn't need to be, but I understand the need to have it and to just make sure, again, my goal and my intention is that it's for all of us in this room to recommit ourselves to our specific roles in those committees and how the board, more specifically, is going to give direction to the administration. But still, nothing has changed in collaboration with all of you. So it really, that was my intention.
And, a thought I'm having is that what we include in either probably the charge with the direction we're going about the description, the scope, the purpose of the committee, while we might want to elicit feedback from the committee members, I think it's the board that is creating this committee to do some work. So it should really be an act of the board saying, this is the work we want you to get done for us and bring back recommendations. That should be in a charge, and then either in a charge or if we have an umbrella policy, again, stating the scope about authority, that the committees are, designed to return recommendations to the board for action. That's all I can think of in terms of what we're seeking here.
Yeah,
Anybody
there's
else?
two pieces to it too, and this
Yeah.
is where the crosswalk is, like the committee doesn't, in some cases, there would be discussion with the board regarding committee recommendations. But in other places, it's the work of the administration. So like that's part of like our work, making sure people understand, like the committees don't overstep what the role of the administration is.
Could you explain that a little more? 'Cause
Yeah,
I'd like to
the committee
grasp it.
couldn't come out and say, we want to have someone working on a Sunday until 10 o'clock at night, right?
Yeah.
Like, but that would be something that we would have to internally decide to do. That's not a board policy. So it's just like the crosswalk between like the responsibility of the board versus the responsibility of the superintendent, and making sure that everyone understands like what their role is in that space based on the recommendations.
Do you mean essentially that the committee should not be taking any action, does not have authority to take action?
So so I'll give you an example
Yeah.
for health and safety, right? So we did a huge process to figure out like different security pieces to improve Greeley. We had these ballers out there, the new guard booth. That came to the board by way of the administration and the budget process, not by way of the safety committee. But we worked through the safety committee to come up with feedback, design, best practice. Like that was our role. There's other things that we've decided to do that was more organic with the communications committee last year. Like we've made some decisions that it didn't have to come through the board. It was just adjustments that we made because it was administratively easy for us to do, and it wasn't something that we had to have like a big discussion. It was around like gathering information, piloting a bot. So like it's just nuanced. It's a little bit more nuanced.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more nuanced. Sometimes people come to the facilities committee and they want to do a project, but it doesn't come through the.
Would that
Yeah.
almost be something that we want to describe in the charge for each committee? What kind of authority the board is delegating to that committee on a standing basis, such as modifying some, minor communication elements versus what things we want to come back? Or do you think that gets
I don't know.
too specific?
I don't know if a committee has really any authority, right?
Right.
It's really an idea generator
Yeah.
for the collective consideration. So like the wellness committee worked a long time on figuring out what needed to happen to improve food services in the Bell cafeteria, right? So through that collective process, we worked to make some adjustments that we recommended to the board in the budget. So I just want to make sure that everyone like kind of understands how it works. But without like us working together, it wouldn't have been able to get done because the wellness committee couldn't have said you need to order new equipment for the Bell cafeteria. Like we needed to like work to do that. Even if it was a recommendation, that wouldn't have meant it might have happened because it had to go through like a two-step process to actually get to the board.
I think that's part of the disconnect for some of the community members when they join the committees. They don't understand that nuance of like that they're not necessarily going to accomplish some big thing, that it's more work to inform the administration and the board about other things that might have to happen. So maybe we just need to be clear when community members, decide to be on communications or wellness or whatever, that they're not there to like they themselves solve some problem. It's more just to inform the rest of us on how to solve it.
Because great ideas come from the committees.
Right. No, I know.
But then what happens is they go from the committees to us to you to figure out what to do. Like we had an idea, like offer first aid and CPR training to everybody. Like now the safety committee couldn't mandate that everyone had that done. We couldn't even do that, but we could facilitate it, and that wouldn't have been something I would have needed to have run through the full board. We were just able to do it. So those are just some, but I think we're all going to be there for now for the committee, so it's going to be a little bit, I think, smoother.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
so
they're
the
going to be meetings
committee
of the
has,
whole.
the committees in and of themselves have no authority. I think people know that. I hope people know that.
I think
I don't
we
think
know.
that.
I think community members get confused. I think they think they have more.
I think the members who served last year are now aware, but I think when we're soliciting new members, we should be clear about, the restrictive nature of their, candidacy / service. It's a think tank. And then,
That's what it is.
right.
That's what it is. but
This
we've
is to
come up
frame
with
it
some
differently
great,
for the public.
like,
Yeah,
but the
that-
committees are important
Sure.
because we've
Yeah,
come up with some
no,
great ideas
Absolutely.
through the committee work. I mean,
No,
they've been great.
I didn't realize that people thought they had authority over something by being on the committee.
I would also think that it would be helpful if the charge really makes it clear that it's an idea generator. It'll also be a helpful reminder for us as board trustees, especially as we're transitioning to this committee of the whole model. You could see, a couple years down the road, you might start to forget that it's just an idea generator to help keep us focused. This is an idea generator to then either bring things back or have the administration propose things to us.
So I just need to know, so we have committees coming up, right? And so whoever's in charge of that committee is gonna sit with the chair. We'll have things for the agenda that we know need to be talked about, and then the board will bring items that they may have for the agenda, and then that'll be the first agenda. And then the chair will let us know if you want whoever's in the meeting on our end to facilitate a SWOT analysis or not. It'll be up to the chair's decision. And then we'll have our first meetings. And then what we'll try to do, based on this conversation, is have some charter language, maybe drafted. Charge. I think a charge language drafted, which I wrote in these bullets here, as perhaps with the chairs, like one of the chair's agenda items. Okay, does that sound good?
Great, awesome.
And with the thought that the board should be approving the charge language for each committee. The committees themselves should not be setting their own charge. The board should be setting the charge for each committee.
Yes.
So also, I guess would appreciate if when we have that draft charge language, distributed to the board, I guess, so we can all see it in advance of those first meetings. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. I think it's going to be easy for us to do it.
Terrific.
And then you can wordsmith.
Okay. So are we, anything else? Anybody?
Ending early, we never end
Oh, let me just ask beforehand, what are our, okay, so and the next steps on mission statement is we're going to receive feedback from faculty and students, and once we've seen that, then we'll plan another work session presumably. Sounds great.
And then David, for the agendas for the committees of the whole, we're going to publish the agendas and we're going to have a pro tem there. And then what is the minutes requirement, just so we're all on the same page?
Just like meetings of the board, minutes would be with respect to recommendations being made to the board. And that would be it. If there are no recommendations, you're opening a meeting and you're closing a meeting. There's no requirement to have minutes to spread comments across what would be minutes. And I think keeping it simpler is probably better. So it's really about recommendations, a lot of brainstorming and a lot of recommendations, and then it comes upstream to the administration and board.
And then Kaylee had asked us to post the topics on the work session. We haven't done that, but we're going to start doing that from now on.
I think it should always be, whether it's work session or special meetings, that we should, the community and everyone who is looking for it should know that what we're meeting about. Okay. So it is now 1:57 p.m. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting at 1:57?
I'll move.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.